With such a broad range of gaming genres and an even deeper glut of video games under each banner, antagonism is to be expected between players, deliberating which is the leading example from said genre. Grand Theft Auto is objectively the more successful open-world sandbox, but Saints Row, up to Volition's 2022 reboot, deserves some love too. Such rivalries between communities can break out between developers as well. It's not uncommon for developers of same genre video games to become petty either before, during, or after production. The best examples of which are when both video games manage to withstand an onslaught of outcry and debate over which is better. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 rivalries that killed video games. Number 10. Doom vs. Marathon. Marathon, the first-person shooter from Bungie, was deemed a monetary success upon its December 1994 release. Praised extensively for its profound storyline, the game spanned a trilogy, each installment receiving a similarly praiseworthy reception for its era-centric uniqueness. Few other, if any, first-person shooters at the time contained such deep-rooted, perplexing stories brimming with Easter eggs. Doom, its PC counterpart, certainly didn't, but is often hailed as a greater triumph than the Bungie-developed franchise. Alongside Wolfenstein 3D, Doom is often regarded as having been the benchmark for FPSs, with subsequent games under the genre typically described as being Doom clones. Marathon, unusually, didn't fall this way, but it was played significantly less than Doom was, purely on the basis of what platform it was released for, being the Apple Macintosh. Had Marathon 2 been released for the PC, it's incredibly probable that this rivalry would have ruled in its favor. Number 9. World of Warcraft vs. EverQuest 2. The MMORPG community is inordinately monopolized by World of Warcraft. Released in November 2004 and thus being older than the inaugural iPhone, WoW was an immediate critical success and now stands as the genre's leading example, with a 2010 peak of 12 million active subscribers. It didn't, however, popularize the genre. That feat belongs to the EverQuest franchise. Released in March of 1999, EverQuest was once adorned with the accolades currently sitting in World of Warcraft's inventory cabinet, oft heralded as the best game the genre has to offer through use of a 3D game engine. Its sequel should have done well then, and it probably would have, had it not been for its ill-fated release date. Thrust into the public domain only 15 days before World of Warcraft was, EverQuest 2 was doomed from the start. Its leading criticism being that it wasn't as commercially successful for the MMORPG genre as its predecessor was. World of Warcraft, meanwhile, was as successful, remaining the premium example to this day. Number 8. Madden NFL 2005 vs. ESPN NFL 2K5. Video game wars between sports-based franchises have continued and will continue to exist as long as the genre remains in existence. There's only one way to acutely computerize the sport, so a second publisher issuing a video game surrounding the sport will automatically be looked down upon. Before Madden NFL became the primary issuer of digitized American football, NFL 2K had its hand in the pocket of the genre too, releasing annually between 1999 and 2004 to mixed responses. Its latest release, July 2004's ESPN NFL 2K5, was met with universal commendation. So much so that a quote from Game Informer's Matthew Cato read, "The best football title there is, and the only one that's a must-have." Costing just $19.99 in comparison to Madden NFL 2005's pricey $49.99, choosing between the two was a no-brainer, until EA gave you no such choice. Cognizant of the potential breakdown of their NFL franchise, EA signed an exclusivity rights deal with the NFL in December of 2004, thus giving them sole use of the treasured American sport in video game form and prematurely concluding the NFL 2K series. The yearly series tragically has been on a downward spiral ever since, such is the case with many annual sports titles. Number 7. Bayonetta vs. Bullet Witch. The Sega-published Bayonetta series, which spans 3 games and an anime film adaptation, Bayonetta Bloody Fate, has been met with such a whirlwind of positive response that many players forget it came after its supposed rival, Bullet Witch. Bullet Witch, Cavia's first FPS for 7th generation consoles, hit Western shelves in Feb of 2007, following an initial July 2006 Japanese release, meaning it was playable for almost 3 years before the first Bayonetta title. It was, however, consistently lampooned for its archaic and clunky gameplay, being remembered more for this than it was for its laudable atmospheric post-apocalyptic setting. When Bayonetta arrived in October October of 2009, it too drew a grey response in some areas, being questioned for its storyline and quick-time events. However, its downfalls were backed by its admirable combat and presentation, which resulted in a wider negative response aimed at Bullet Witch. The two games were never really in competition despite the rivalry between them. The wholly distinct release dates confirm as such. This was more an example of the game's communities targeting each other for what they perceived as a lesser ripoff. Indeed, there were few, if any, resemblances between the two. Number 6. Team Fortress 2 versus Team Fortress Classic. Fans of the Team Fortress franchise have debated which is better, with the second incarnation typically dominating chat rooms. Praise goes to its pleasant gameplay and use of character. However, the former game perceives this as being too gruff in presentation, believing the vast new features to be unnecessary and quote-unquote noobish. Keep in mind there was almost a decade gap between the two titles releasing, with the second being confirmed in 1998, before twice being delayed and a period of 6 years without any formal updates. Such development hell for a game that was eventually released is punishable by strongly worded message board comments in today's era. That it still stands up today and is still receiving regular Valve support exemplifies the clear line drawn between it and its measly predecessor. Number 5. Overwatch versus Lawbreakers. In a similar sense as World of Warcraft has done for the MMORPG genre, Overwatch has modernly popularized the team-based FPS, managing to maintain its position of sovereignty through a myriad of fan-fueled rivalries against opposing communities. While there are plenty of titles we can point at, perhaps none were as deserving of the title as Lawbreakers. Being almost entirely influenced by Blizzard Entertainment's latest franchise, Lawbreakers, the 2017 FPS from Nexon, did attempt to develop upon the Overwatch established formula by introducing assorted concepts to the genre, namely low gravity, but the game failed to take off as hoped and eventually shut its servers just 13 months into its shelf life. What's shocking is that initial reviews positively favored Lawbreakers. It garnered a score of 76 on Metacritic, with other notable outlets praising the title with 4-star reviews. Hosting a closed beta on Steam with 7,500 players, this dropped drastically by 40% during its open beta. Upon launch, it dropped by 60%. Game director Cliff Bleszinski did, however, state that player figures for PlayStation 4's copy of Lawbreakers were significantly higher, though he refrained from specifics. Number 4. Grand Theft Auto 3 versus Driver. As a foremost franchise, Grand Theft Auto has encountered franchise warfare more than most others, and none more infamous, more cheerful, more flagrantly "this is so stupid" than their harmless dispute with Driver. Where Grand Theft Auto was more sly, sort of, Driver's comeback was in-your-face anti-GTA, which only pulled back the curtain on how far behind they were. Having been mocked by GTA 3's Two-Face Tanner mission, in which the player is tasked with eradicating a man described as being, quote, more or less useless out of his car, Driver 3 was a bit more liberal in its attempted mockery. They included a character named Timmy Vermicelli, a depressingly obvious caricature of Vice City's Tommy Vercetti, adorned in a blocky Hawaiian shirt and a pair of water inflatables. Get it? Because GTA protagonists couldn't swim in this era. It was admittedly hilarious until they went overboard. They effectively made what was once a bad GTA jab into something of a focal point of the game that awarded players. They had to find every Vermicelli hidden around throughout the game, of which there were 30, and if they killed each one, they'd receive some gameplay tweaks. The side quest as a whole was objectless, and the reward was anything but. It scans more as free GTA advertising than it does a jab, and revealed Driver at their worst. Number 3. Mass Effect versus 2 Human. 2 Human was a destitute product in comparison to Mass Effect. The latter title spanning 4 as-yet published games, a forthcoming and untitled 5th, and a remastered release of the original trio. Silicon Knights' 2 Humans developers were forced to recall all unsold 2 Human copies following their $4.45 million lawsuit loss to Epic Games in regards to Epic's Unreal Engine 3 usage in 2 Human. This ultimately led to the developers filing for bankruptcy in May of 2014, releasing just one game post 2 Human, X-Men Destiny. It wasn't beneficial to their cause then that 2 Human was an abhorrent inferior take on the sci-fi RPG genre. Denounced for its litany of issues, namely its graphics and control scheme, 2 Human was never truly a competitor to Mass Effect, which had sold almost 2 million copies within 2 months of its release. What's bizarre is that it was 2 Human which was the more anticipated anticipated title pre-release. Both were given extensive periods of hype and the promise of deep storylines across a supposedly long line of titles, but only Mass Effect delivered on the promise. Two Human barely escaped development hell before becoming immersed in legal hell. Number 2. Halo vs. HAZE and KILLZONE. Halo was a genuine needle mover in the FPS genre, proving that such games could be played marvelously without the need for a mouse. The series has since grown authentically to be a heavyweight in the video game market, with 10 official games and a smattering of re-releases, standalone expansion packs, numerous short-lived web shows, and a 2022 released television series. Both HAZE and KILLZONE, however, set the genre back. Prior to their respective May 2008 and November 2004 releases, the duo was heavily anticipated. Props went to their unique, intriguing concepts, but their glut of issues was too high to honestly consider it on the same level as Halo. Though they were dubbed in the media as Halo killers, neither HAZE nor KILLZONE had the chance to escape its lifelong second-place status, regularly being included in lists from assorted outlets that discuss the worst and/or most disappointing titles of the generation. They were dull, feeble attempts from Ubisoft and Sony respectively at capitalizing on the newfound extols surrounding FPS games, failing to make even the slightest dent in the market, whereas Halo amplified Xbox sales, and with its second title, broke first-day sales records with a weighty $125 million in earnings. HAZE and KILLZONE actually killed themselves, not Halo. Number 1. Marvel Ultimate Alliance vs. Justice League Heroes. Asking comic fans to choose between DC and Marvel is like asking a parent to choose their favorite child. They may have a preference, but it's oft unmentioned. The two media leviathans have rivaled over comic books, video games, television series, and films for as long as they've been in operation. But in 2006, the video game rivalry stemmed between Marvel Ultimate Alliance and Justice League Heroes. They were similar in creativity, both encompassing hefty superhero lineups and clean, captivating storylines. But one accomplished its goals significantly better, while the other died in the week before its rival hit shelves. The two games were released just 7 days apart. Justice League Heroes was first on the 17th of October 2006, followed by Marvel Ultimate Alliance on the 24th of October. Although the first was met with somewhat positive reviews, it failed in many areas, where Ultimate Alliance succeeded, namely the inability to play as any character on any level, which Ultimate Alliance did offer. MUA subsequently saw 2 sequels released in 2009 and 2019, whereas Justice League Heroes was killed off quicker than Task Force X was in the Suicide Squad, having left a putrid taste in players' mouths that Marvel Ultimate Alliance swiftly purified. That's the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other video game rivalries that killed themselves. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness. Thanks.